Hey, welcome everyone, it's Darren. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of the very powerful functions of Excel. In fact, I'd say that one of the most powerful functions in Excel, and that's VLOOKUP. It's a function that it does kind of intimidate people. It scares a lot of people. The good news is you can't really hurt anything with VLOOKUP. Bad news is it's fairly easy to get the wrong answer. So you do have to use it correctly. And I said a couple of the functions, and the reason for that is that there's VLOOKUP's twin function, which is hlookup, which is almost exactly the same function, and virtually no one ever uses it. And we'll come to that why that is as well. So to understand VLOOKUP, we have to understand a little of the history of spreadsheets and databases. Spreadsheets, when they first started out, it was a single worksheet. And there's some good reasons for that. Computing power used to be a lot more limited than it is today. And really, if you had more than one sheet and you wanted to connect anything between them, you should really be using a database. But when Excel came along and they kind of took over, eventually they picked up some additional worksheet options. And at first, when these extra worksheet options came in, no one thought they were going to be useful at all. And people gradually realize, they are once you master functions like VLOOKUP. And it allows you to sort of cross cross the line a little bit between spreadsheets and databases. And I'm going to show you how to use VLOOKUP. And we'll talk about some examples of why you would use VLOOKUP. It's incredibly powerful, it's incredibly useful, and it saves you from having to learn how to do database programming. And that's really the advantage here. Okay, so here I have a table, and it's just the states and the populations for those states. And I have another sheet over here, and that is the state and the number of square miles in that state. So we're going to use VLOOKUP to figure out the population per square mile by state. Well, obviously it's going to be equals the population for the state, which in this case that's D3, divided by the number of square miles. Well, what is that? Well, I can look over here and I see I have the states and the number of square miles. And I could just look it up and type it in, I suppose. That would work here, but it's really inconvenient if you're doing something like, customer credit limits or something. So instead, we're going to use VLOOKUP. And to do that, it's VLOOKUP. And you see you have the hint up there, VLOOKUP, lookup value. And the lookup value is the value that you are trying to match between this data and some other table out somewhere else. So in this case, I'm trying to match California, which is in cell C3, and then table array. Table array is what you are trying to match to. I know it says table, and Excel has these things called tables. You do not need to be in a table. These can just be in regular cells. So, and come over here. Uh, since I don't have a column heading on here, I'm just picking column A and B. The other option that you have is actually to pick the actual range that you're working with. But if you do that, remember that you're probably going to want to come up here and make these into absolutes because I'm going to be copying this stuff around later and I don't want these things to move. So you can do either one. Okay. And then comma again, column index number. Column index number is on that table array that you just picked. The leftmost column is the thing you're going to match. So we're matching states, so I had to pick the state for that leftmost column, and that's column A. That's column number one. And then you move over to the right. So in this case, I want the second column. So it's column index number two. You can have as many columns as you want. The more you have, it will slow things down eventually if you get really, really huge. Uh, Probably not something you're going to need to worry about because I mean really huge. Uh, okay, this one is just weird. And so this parameter is optional. If you leave the parameter off, it defaults to true, which is approximate match. If you include it, you can put in either true or false. Usually you want false. And it doesn't go in quotes or anything. This is a Boolean, so it's all uppercase false or all uppercase true. And I'll show you why here in a minute. So let's go ahead and close that out and hit enter. And the people per square mile in California, there's 237.7329 something people per square mile. Okay, well, let's just copy this down for all the states. Okay. Yeah, let's make this a little bit easier to read. So I was going to change the formatting here and do number format. And I'll just do a tenth of a person there. Okay, so California is 237.7 people per square mile. Uh, Florida is actually a little denser at 344.6 per square mile. We can skim through here and look for the really weird ones. Rhode Island. Rhode Island's not there. Why is Rhode Island in error? Let's take a look. England is there. And I did A2, A50 instead of A1. Okay, so we can fix that. Let's change the correct 2 value in there. So that should be A1 to B50. Still column 2. Okay. Okay. So we have some pretty sparsely populated states here. Alaska is only 1.1 people per square mile, which is not a whole lot of people. So anyway, that is false, which is the exact match. Let's try the same thing with true. And you might think that approximate is better. So if we look at this is still D3 divided by Vlookup of um, C3, comma, table array. Remember I said you can just do the whole column if you want, comma, column 2. In this case, we're going to do true. Not available. Okay, let's see what happens if we do all of these. Okay, well, some of these have numbers. Some of these give errors. Most of the numbers look different. So what's going on here? Well, the way that the approximate works is it goes over here and it starts here and goes down the list. And it tries to figure out what's closest. So if as soon as it hits something higher than that, so if it's something before Rhode Island alphabetically, it's going to put in Rhode Island. If it's something, then it's going to skip down here a ways. You can hit West Virginia. So we're really only dividing by a couple of different numbers here. If you're using approximate, you must sort the data. And you must sort it by the field that you're going to be searching on. So in this case, by state. So if we are going to be using approximate, then I have to sort this by column A. And then I come over here And suddenly these numbers all sort of make a lot more sense and they should all match. And approximate can be useful. It can handle some things, but like I said, it can give you errors and you can't necessarily tell when there's errors. I usually will use false, so exact match only. That way it's always safe. So, what about HLOOKUP? Okay, well, in VLOOKUP, you see this table here where you have the states, you have the populations. If you were to make an Excel sheet, this is how you do it. Let's look at HLOOKUP though. If your data is like this, um, so it's oriented horizontally instead of vertically. If your data is like this, one way to do it is simply to copy it and do a transpose paste, and it looks like the original. In fact, that's how I made this one, is I took the original data and I transpose paste it horizontal. But you can just use HLOOKUP. And the good news is, once you know how to use VLOOKUP, you already know how to use HLOOKUP. Let me show you here. So this is equals, in this case, it's going to be um, still D2, D3 divided by H lookup. And it's still C3 is what we're trying to look up. And our range, yep, same thing. It's just the two rows, the two columns. And you still can do which index you want. And in this case, I want, or in this case, is row index is a column index. So the state names is row one, and that's what we're searching on, remember. And the square miles is two. So it's row number two and false. And we come up with the same number again. And then copy that down. And since that list was already sorted, and that would have worked perfectly fine. What did I do wrong here? Oh, see the row number here is changing because I'm changing rows here. So that's actually $1 and $2. Yeah. So that was not a problem with this formula because when we copied down rows, I did the whole column, so nothing changed. It is a problem with this column because we are moving down rows but across columns. So that's the difference. Uh, Again, always just include these dollar signs up here. This is going to just eliminate potential issues. And unless there's a really good reason not to do it, always sort the tables that you're searching into. Now, if you read it in the forums and stuff, there's a new version out there called xlookup. And xlookup, if you know how to use VLOOKUP, you know how to use xlookup. Um, xlookup can actually do more things, but there's a reason that I don't use it, and that is that as of the time I'm recording this, at least, xlookup only works if you have a reasonably up-to-date version of Excel 365. If you have a standalone version of Excel, it doesn't work. If you're running a different spreadsheet program, it doesn't work. If you're running online versions, it doesn't work. It has to be Excel 365. It has to be reasonably updated. So, if you are running that, if you know that no one who will ever open your workbook is running anything but the reasonably updated version of Excel 365, then you can go ahead and use it. If you think you might send this to anybody that has anything else, I'd stick with VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP because both of those are supported pretty much everywhere. So before we talk about some examples of how you can use this, if you're getting anything out of this video, please do hit like and subscribe and hit notify. That does a few things. First, it tells YouTube, hey, this video is worth watching. Show this to more people. Also, it'll let you know when I release new content so you can see it. Uh, and of course, having more viewers and more likes and more subscribes, that motivates YouTube creators like me to keep going. I also have a Patreon page. If you can help out there, a few bucks a month would be great. It's patreon.com/data analysis excellent. That also obviously keeps YouTube creators motivated. So, how do you use all of this stuff? Well, in this case, this is pretty simple, but a real world example, let's say that you are operating a store and you have a bunch of customers and you have a bunch of inventory. So instead of having state and square mile, maybe you have customer number, customer name, customer address, customer credit terms, any comments or notes about the customer. And over here, instead of trying to do something like this, you put in an order that says something like customer number 3, and all of their information will just pop up. And it means you don't have to ask the customer for the information. You don't have to ask for shipping information. You don't have to see whether they're approved for credit or not. As soon as you type in the customer number, you get everything. You do the same thing with inventory. You type in a barcode number, brings everything up for you. So VLOOKUP again is one of the most powerful functions in Excel. It really lets you sort of stretch the limits of Excel kind of towards databases, but in places where you don't really want a full database. You don't want to learn database programming. You don't want to pay for separate database servers. Uh, there are limits. You don't have the security you have in databases, and you can't have as much data necessarily. And Excel sheets, of course, can get huge, but nothing compared to what databases can do. So go ahead and use this where you can. I think that you'll find it fairly easy to work with. Grab some data like this to play with it. And again, I do recommend always, 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 unless you have a really good reason not to, uh, the data table that you're looking up information should always be sorted by the field that you're looking at. And also, ideally, you'll always use false, VLOOKUP false or HLOOKUP false as that last parameter. And the reason is that if you use true, you're more likely to get the wrong information somewhere and not be able to tell that it's wrong. So any questions, leave them down in the comments. Again, hit like and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you again next time.